Hello. Sure that was loud online. All right, let's do our announcements and we'll have a prayer, but thank you all for coming and thank you all for watching. Month of March, the entire month of March is our Annie Armstrong offering, and it's we have envelopes. Do we have? Yeah, we have special envelopes for that giving if you'd like to do that. And then there's some prayer guides for the missionaries in HPU. Definitely encourage you to get one of those and take that seriously and pray through those prayer guides. March the 2nd, coming up pretty soon, 6:30 p.m. Fellowship Hall is the women's ministry. Then March the 15th is our men's ministry at 6 p.m. in the Fellowship Hall. And then March 25th, we do our Easter egg hunt at 6:30. That's a Wednesday, isn't it? Yep. Yeah, March 25th, that's a Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Have our Easter egg hunt and etc. Whatever else is going on that evening. And then March 31st, this is a big one. Remember that, March 31st through June 3rd is our Vacation Bible School. Hi.
Hi.
You need something?
No, I'm just standing out here.
Oh, okay. I thought didn't you used to be shy or something?
Nope.
Did you say March 31st through
May 31st through June the 3rd. That's better than I did last year. I'm pretty sure last year I made the Bible school I probably did that same thing, didn't I? Hi, Paul Ray. You just vanished. You weren't there the first time I looked up. How you feeling? That good, huh? Everybody, we're live streaming here. Why don't you go find your pew and keep it warm? I remember we used to have to basically pay him to come up here and sing in the kids thing. You didn't used to want to come up here and sing in the kids thing on Sunday morning. No. Baylor. All righty, that's it. I think what we got going on. All right, let's come together in prayer, and then we'll do a song. Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for your many, many blessings. Thank you, Father, for all that you have done for us and so much more. And thank you, Father, for that ultimate sacrifice of your Son. Lord, thank you for the salvation that you have so freely offered to us. Thank you for the grace and the hope that provides and the mercy, Lord. All of these things, we thank you so much for those. And I pray, Father, that we live obediently for you, that, Father, the fruit of the Spirit would just shine so bright through our lives, fathers, and that all would see and worship you. Thank you again for all that you're doing for us and here in this church. In your blessed holy name, amen.
Let's turn to 333.
All right. Thank you all again. I'm going to finish up chapter 10 tonight, 16 through 20, and then we'll start 11 next week. Be a couple to get through 11. We're not too terribly far away from finishing up Ecclesiastes. But 16 through 20, so he is, we see him do this repeatedly through the book of Ecclesiastes. He'll zoom in on something very specific, and then he'll zoom out and look at the bigger picture, and then he'll zoom back in and back out. And tonight is one of those zoom out moments. And he's looking at, as the title suggests here, things like leadership, culture, consequences of those things, as makes sense once you, why he's gotten to this point, because you look back through all of these things. It's basically he's zoomed in on those things, and now he's zooming back out and kind of looking at them as a whole. It's not repeated, but there are things that you tie back to what we talked about over the last couple of weeks. One thing that we know and that he knew is that nations, they don't rise or fall by accident. They don't just happen. It's either a group of people working together and that nation is formed and it grows, or it's a group of people, well, we'll use the word lazy or sinful or immature that's mentioned tonight, and that nation begins to fail. And it's the same with cultures. Cultures don't just drift into health, for example, just randomly. They don't drift into decay just randomly. It happens quietly behind the scenes. Starts with a few people. And this is not just a governmental thing. This also happens within the church. It happens within homes. It happens within schools. And you see that where the condition of every society are always impacted by these two very powerful forces, which are leadership. Those, again, at church, school, state, government, world, whatever. Leadership and character. Poor character within an environment will cause it to slip into moral decay, cause it to fail. So he's widening this lens here again. He spoke to us before about wisdom and the word folly that he would use just to make dumb decisions, rash decisions, which was kind of last week. And now he's turning that into, he's looking at those specific things, so he's zooming back out to look at what that looks like on a society level. Again, he uses a lot of examples here of maybe government, but it applies so much more to everything. It applies to a church just as much as it would to a government. So he contrasts here right at the beginning, in these first verses, he contrasts these two types of society. One is led by an immature ruler who's just out for indulgence, he's out for himself, and another is led by a mature leader who's focused on responsibility, focused on the growth of the people. And then he gets into very specifically about laziness. If your issue is laziness, then it's in here. It describes that very clearly on how poor of a choice that is, and how there's no really example to where laziness is going to lead to something positive. It's almost always, especially in terms of society, it leads to downfall. And there's consequences to that. So let's look at 16 and 17 to begin, then the others will be individual. It says in verse 16, it says, "Woe to you, land whose king is a boy, and whose princes feast in the morning. Blessed are you, land whose king is of nobility, and whose princes eat at the appropriate time, for strength and not for drunkenness." So again here, he starts right off with leadership. Leadership, but he uses examples of kings and princes, but honestly this applies to anything. So right off the bat, we need to correct what you might be thinking here. He says, whose king is a boy. That is not, even in the original writing, not anything that indicates anything to do with age, but it is about character. It's not about chronological age. So you really can, you could have two different people who are 25, and one of them is vastly more mature than the other. You can have 18-year-olds in the same condition. You can have 15-year-olds in the same condition. So it's not anything to do with necessarily age. But we kind of understand that because even in our leadership in this country, whether or not it's actually working at this point is to be determined. But you can't be president up until a certain age. There's a minimum age to be president. Why do we do that? Because usually age is supposed to make you more mature, but that just, I don't know. I don't think we've had mature presidents in one fashion or the other in a long time, regardless of the aisle that you're sitting on, but that's where we're at. But again, this has nothing to do with age necessarily, but it is about a ruler, regardless of that age, who is either young and wise, or could be old and foolish, or it could be young and foolish, or young and wise. But the issue is not years. It's maturity, it's discipline, it's responsibility. Things that I hope that we would look for. Immature leadership has some certain marks that he brings out here. One of those is impulsiveness. Would you all necessarily want, if you were looking for a pastor, would you want an impulsive pastor who just made rash decisions without consulting anybody, who just jumped into things before talking about, I don't make rash decisions, Bobby? I have to tell the live streamers who's pointing fingers back in. What about self-indulgence? Would you want a pastor who just looked out for himself? What can you do for me? How can you line my pockets? How can you fill my cup? What can you do for me? Or would you want a pastor who has lack of foresight? Could you imagine? No direction whatsoever, no point to anything, no thinking about the future. You're just kind of drifting through it, not really caring. You're just along for the ride. What about prioritizing pleasure over responsibility? Definitely don't want that in a pastor or anything in any form of leadership, to where, in this example, they give these princes who just are drunk. They do that in the morning. There's a reason for that. I'll get back to that. But they do all this in the morning, and they're just drunk by the time the afternoon rolls around. They're just doing things for pleasure. They have no responsibility. They have no idea, nor do they care on what's going on outside of their little palaces. They just know that they want to keep their coffers full. They want to make sure their food stores are full, and they want to make sure that they have all the pleasure that they need right now. That's all they're concerned with. That is not good leadership in anything. Leadership and selfishness just honestly do not go hand in hand. I understand that people have ambitions, and people have goals, and people are sometimes more extremely extrovert, to where they might appear like a narcissist, for example. I understand those things, but leadership in any capacity should not be included in the idea of selfishness or self-centeredness. It should always be a person who understands that who they're in charge of they need to be good stewards of that. Whether it's people, whether it's stuff, whatever, they need to be good stewards of those things. As a pastor, I've got to make sure that that's always at the front of my mind. That's the lens that I always look for. That I've got to be good stewards of your all's learning, of your all's growth. And if not, why do it? Good question indeed. But mature leadership, on the other hand, is something that is going to strengthen a nation. He says that here. He says, "Blessed are you, land whose king is of nobility." Again, nobility here, he's throwing out these words that don't necessarily mean what that we think that we mean when we read them in English. This is not birth status. A noble leader, somebody who is noble, would be somebody who possesses discipline, for example, somebody who is wise, or somebody who has a sense of responsibility toward others. Things that, if you wanted to use the medieval times, not the restaurant, but the actual era, as an example, you saw a lot of knights. One thing that they wanted to achieve more than anything else was honor. They wanted to be honorable. They wanted to be noble in their actions, and they really strove for that. It was a big deal if somebody accused you of not being honorable. And that's the kind of mentality here. As a leader, a wise leader should strive for those things, to be honorable, to be wise, to have that sense of responsibility. If you're thinking about that in terms of pastors, do you want a pastor that walks in whose only sense of responsibility is himself? I mean, is there ever a scenario where that's going to turn out good? Turn out well? Whatever the proper grammar is there. Is there ever a scenario where that's going to work? When any leader of any capacity, when they walk into a building or they walk into a school, a lot of you teachers understand that, or they walk into the central office, or they walk into some government office, and their only responsibility is to themselves. So that's just not going to work, and it almost always ends poorly, and the people suffer for it. But this reflects a real biblical leadership principle here. This is not something that Solomon just pulled out of thin air. This is a biblical principle that you see time and time again. For example, Matthew 20, 26 through 28. He says, "It is not this way among you, but whoever wants to become prominent among you, you shall be your servant. And whoever desires to be first among you shall be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." If you want to be in leadership, if you desire to be in leadership, let that be at the front of all your thoughts, of all your goals, of all your actions. Serve others. I know you might not, I know they break down leadership styles into different things. Mine is more servant leadership. That's pretty much what I've always focused on. Even at Johnson, it's the same thing. I know there's different styles. But even in those styles, you can still serve those who you work with. You can serve those who are your customers. You can serve those who are around you on a daily basis. And it's when that happens, I know that not every employee is perfect, but when that happens, when there truly is a level of service that's coming from the top down, the environment is usually more happy than if it was the other way around, to where the top wanted you to serve them. There's science to that. Also leadership, it affects cultural health. Solomon gives blessings here. He gives warnings here. They highlight this broader kind of principle on leadership, on how it changes character and how that character shapes those that are around you. Scripture, again, affirms this a lot. Proverbs 29, verse 2, he says, "When the righteous increase," we read this last week, "the people rejoice, but when a wicked person rules, people groan." That's really practical. You all understand that probably on a very real level. If you've got a boss, or you've got a president or a vice president or congressman, whatever, if you've got those who rule in a wicked way, you tend to groan about that, to hurt about that. And if you've got somebody, though, who is righteous, somebody who has those higher standards, somebody who is a servant, then people tend to rejoice over that. It happens all the times. We kind of get this confused about leadership, is that we think that leadership only creates policies. Like your principals, you all understand that. You may think that they just create these random policies that you've got to follow, or the central office creates these policies, or the Tennessee Board of Education creates these policies. We may think that, and they do to an extent, but real leadership does not only sit down and write out a list of policies. Real leadership, good leadership, is going to set a good tone for those that they work around. It's going to set a good direction, good moral climate. All those are just as important for a pastor, if not more important in some cases. Would you want a pastor who set a poor tone? In other words, where when you are around me, do I make you feel oppressed? Do I make you feel uncomfortable? Do I make you feel angry? You might. I hope you would tell me. It's been about 7 years at this point. If you haven't told me by now, I don't know if there's any hope. But I hope you do. But I want to set a good tone. I want people to be happy. I want people to feel comfortable. I want that. I'm adamant about that at work. I know some bosses say, if my door's open, you can come in, open door policy, then you go in there and it's like walking through an ice wall. I get that. I don't foster that environment at work. I'm the same as you see me here. They come in and I have a couch and they sit on the couch and sometimes they're just talking to each other and they're ignoring me. And that's fine. I want them to feel that way. Also direction. Whether I'm at work or I'm here, I've got to be able to have that mindset of I need to set direction. Are we going out into the world? Are we following the Great Commission like we're supposed to? What about moral climate? Would you want a pastor who set a poor moral climate? I don't know. You might. You think, that would be so cool. Go out drinking with the pastor on Saturday night and then we can get together on Sunday morning. That'd just be a good old time. Bobby would say they're drinking that devil's juice. That'd be just fun. I don't think so. I think it would create a very poor environment very quickly amongst everybody. And so you need a leader who sets a good moral climate around them. And then personally, beyond all this government stuff, it goes beyond national leaders. It's within your own families. Men, you have a calling in your home to be the priest in your home. You have a calling to do the same thing that I'm trying to do here. You have a calling to set the tone in your home. Wives, bring this home to your husbands. If they're not here tonight, make sure to tell them. They have the responsibility to set the tone in the home. A tone of peace, a tone of joy, a tone of spirituality that just flows freely. It's the same thing in our churches, all the way down through the whole things. Deacons, teachers, all these things. We have to set that tone of goodness. Workplaces, communities, it fits everywhere. Immature leaders, though, back to that, they will almost always, you could probably bet your life on it, that they will almost always harm more than they do good when that exists. But mature leadership, whatever that may look like, blesses wherever it exists. And there's a gospel perspective to this, of course. And the ultimate contrast to all of this that we've talked about is Christ. Now, earthly leaders, me included, are absolutely going to fail. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to sin. Things like pride, things like indulgence, they do get in the way even when you have a good man. But Jesus leads always with perfect wisdom, always with perfect humility, always with this perfect sacrifice as we see him do on the cross. So if you follow Christ in your life, it makes it a lot easier to deal with somebody who is not, somebody who is maybe immature, somebody who is selfish. So what does that mean? Well, it goes back to what we also see in the New Testament, to pray for leaders. Do you? I'm not talking about do you pray for their death? Or do you pray for some kind of personal home? Or do you pray that a school, I don't know what you call them, a school of badgers is going to break into their house and just eat them up? I don't know. That's not what praying for your leaders means. I mean sincerely praying for them, praying for their salvation, praying that they receive wisdom, praying that they set that tone, that direction. Pray for them. That's very hard to do because we're kind of inspired to be angry at those kind of people. I get it. Verse 18, laziness. Laziness. Through extreme laziness, the rafters sag, and through idleness, the house leaks. That is, it's a good example, really good example, because you could put this out in a modern day home, and it still perfectly fits. This has absolutely nothing to do with culture. It's as relevant as it was all those years ago. It's absolutely relevant. Through extreme laziness, the rafters sag, and through idleness, the house leaks. So let's talk that out. Do houses break quickly? Did this church get in this condition quickly? Over time. And we've, well before my time, but things have been patched and things like that here, built onto, added on, repaired, but still. Could you imagine if none of those things took place? Could you imagine if you never did anything to your house? You never changed your filters? When I was at Fair Oaks, this tells you how horrible I am as a man. There was a filter inside of I changed the ones upstairs, but there was also a filter in the unit, out in the garage. You pulled it out of the bottom, it was in there. Never knew it was there. How long did we live there? 5 years? Didn't change it in 5 years. I'm sure the air quality was exceptional in my house over there. And I was doing something one day, I guess it was when the air conditioner broke, and the guy was there. He goes, "Have you ever changed this filter?" Didn't even know a filter was in there, so the answer is no. Felt like an idiot. But, yeah, could you imagine doing that? Or could you imagine if y'all just stopped cleaning your house? That would drive Lacey nuts. Absolutely nuts. But could you imagine if you did? Or your car. You don't need to change the oil in there anymore. Just a waste of time. It's fine. It's not going to leak. So you don't do that anymore. You don't, all that maintenance stuff that you got to do to cars, I'm not going to do that anymore. There's no point. Bobby's tractors, can you imagine if you didn't do any maintenance to them ever? I can't imagine Bobby not doing maintenance to his tractors. I'm probably sure it's very meticulously, probably recorded as well. But I couldn't. What would happen if you didn't? I think we all know the answer to that question. What would happen if you just stopped? I've had a hard day today, I'm not going to do that. Then the next day you say the same thing, and the next day you say the same thing. Well, you get this verse, laziness, the rafters sag, and through idleness the house leaks. You got a hole in your roof, it's fine. I'll keep the bucket there. It's keeping the floor dry, it's all right. Plus it gives a nice little bloop, bloop, bloop soup while I'm sleeping. That's very nice. It's eventually either the mold or the roof is going to collapse or something. It's bound to happen. But neglect almost always, like you just said, it almost always leads to a very slow destruction. Neglecting something, neglecting husbands, neglecting your wives. Marriages don't usually end overnight. It takes time. And during that time, if there's neglect from the wife or neglect from the husband or neglect from both, that marriage will inevitably fail if something doesn't happen. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's something that just kind of seeps into the home, and it's laziness. Rafters sag, the roof leaks, damage accumulates very slowly, but it happens. And that point is very, very profound here that he's making. His systems will rarely suddenly fail. They fail through neglect eventually. And laziness doesn't always look dramatic. It's not. Let me read some of these things. See what you think about these. Delay, procrastination. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next week. I'll do it when the sun is shining. I'll do it when it's a windy day so it's nice and cool. I'll do it when I got more money. I'll do it when I have more time. Inattention. Just you're there. I could think this would apply to things like your kids. You know, you're in the room with them, but you're really not paying attention to them. You're not really interacting with them. You do that with your spouse too. That's very dangerous. Avoidance of maintenance. That happens a lot. I'll change the oil next week. I'll change those brakes at some point. They're fine. They're not squealing at me yet. They're okay. Just little small responsibilities every day that we all have. We just kind of ignore them. All those things. Over time, that neglect, it adds up and it builds up and it produces a real visible collapse. You might not notice the neglect so much, but you do absolutely notice the collapse of it. And responsibility absolutely sustains things. So if we show responsibility with this building, which for the most part we have, just things added up faster than what we could handle. But if we show responsibility to our homes or to the organizations that we work with or ministries or families or nations, and we put in that ongoing effort to make sure they're healthy, well, if you look at it that way, maintenance, using a mechanical term there, but maintenance, whether it's in your families or in your homes, is not an optional thing. It's essential. Have to. We have to take care of things that we have been given stewardship of, whether that is a husband or a wife, children, jobs, whatever. It says in Proverbs 24:30 through 34, I passed by the field of a lazy one, and by the vineyard of a person lacking sense. And behold, it was completely overgrown with weeds. Its surface was covered with weeds, and its stone wall was broken down. When I saw, I reflected upon it. I looked and received instruction. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, then your poverty will come like a drifter, and your need like an armed man. That verse right there should really shout to us. He doesn't say a lot of sleep. He says a little sleep. He doesn't say a lot of slumber. He says a little slumber. He doesn't say a lot of folding your hands to rest. You'll kick him back in the recliner. He doesn't say a lot of it. He says a little of it. Because those little things can so quickly catch up and build up in our lives that they cause destruction, to use his words. So let's look at the spiritual side of that, spiritual laziness. Laziness isn't just merely just being inefficient with our spiritual life here in this cave. It's very much of a heart issue. It kind of reflects a person who is avoiding responsibility that we have in Scripture. We have certain spiritual disciplines that we're supposed to do as Christians. You all agree with that? We should be praying regularly, often. We should be studying our words regularly and often. We should be sharing the gospel. We should be making disciples. All those things that we have that are, and more, that are spiritual disciplines, we should be doing those things. But a lot of times we avoid them. I'll do that tomorrow. Just like a house is going to collapse, the temple that you've been in charge of here is going to collapse as well. We just won't be happy. It'll be impossible for us, physically impossible for us to maintain true joy and happiness if we ignore things like prayer and the reading of His Word. Paul warns this in 1 Thessalonians 4, 11 and 12. He says, and to make it your ambition to lead a quiet life and attend to your own business and work with your hands, just as you were instructed you, so that you will behave properly towards outsiders and not be in any need. Just work and strive for those things. Of course, if you look at the gospel, God Himself is a worker. We know that on the seventh day He rested. So He's a worker. He did work in creation. He said, let there be light, and everything was created. He did that. And providence, in other words, giving us things, or keeping this world going, keeping our lives going. Redemption, that was certainly an act of work for Him. And so if we're created in the image of a very working God, that should apply to us too. John 5:17, He said, but He answered them, my Father is working until now, and I myself am working. So that leads to a question. Is where, and don't ask yourself, don't answer this out loud, but where have you neglected things, and are they creating future problems? And probably, if you're honest with those things, is they're almost always little things, and they're going to be very easy for you to fix. They're going to be very easy for you to do. It's just little things that you've just kind of neglected. Think and pray over those things. Now verse 19, he said, people prepare a meal for enjoyment. Wine makes life joyful, and money is the answer to everything. I am sure this verse can be taken way out of context and can be used by many prosperity preachers all across the planet. Money is the answer to everything. Do you know why he wrote that? Because Solomon was incredibly practical. Solomon, remember, he was looking at things under the sun. He was looking at life like a human. And any of us would be just truly lost in our minds if we thought that money wasn't the answer to everything. Money makes life easier. He doesn't advocate for money. He's not saying that everybody should be rich. He's not saying that God promises everybody to be rich. But it does make things easier. I'm getting ready to talk about the problems with money, so don't worry, I'm not advocating money up here. But it does. You all wouldn't have to go to work tomorrow if you had a lot of money. You wouldn't have to worry about insurance if you had a lot of money. You wouldn't have to worry about treatments or surgery if you had a lot of money. You wouldn't have to worry about maintenance on your house if you had a lot of money, because you can call the handy helpers and they can come on their way and help you. You wouldn't have to worry about your car, because you can just take it to the garage and say, here, it needs its maintenance, I'll pay whatever. You don't have to worry about mowing your yard. You can call Devin, and Devin can show up and mow your yard for you. Well, if you want his number, let me know. Plug in there for Devin. But if he'll mow your yard for you. You don't have to think about a lot of things when you have money. That is, I'm not, me or Solomon is not being foolish by saying that. It's just one of those facts of reality. But it creates problems itself. The point is not so much money. The point is always, what are you placing your trust in? You can have a lot of money, but still trust in God completely. Or you can have a lot of money and do what with it? Trust in that money. So we've seen that practical side of these resources. Paul Ray had millions of dollars, and he was just handing it out, hand over foot. Would we have to worry about a loan? You don't have millions of dollars laying around, do you? I don't know, you looked a little bit more iffy on that. He might want to check under his house in some jars. Is it buried next to a tree and find it with a metal detector? But they do. I mean, if we had a lot of overly wealthy people in this church, we wouldn't have to worry so much about getting a loan for the new building. But it helps with provision. It helps solve logistical problems. If you don't want to take your kid to school, hire a kid Uber. Drop them off for you. You don't have to worry about those. It influences. It does. Money has an influence on society, on people. It does tend to stabilize systems when done correctly. It's called economics. But Proverbs also recognizes that same dynamic in Proverbs 18:11. We see that here. A rich person's wealth is his strong city, and like a high wall in his own imagination. Wealth, I'm not wealthy. But wealth itself is not bad just by itself. Somebody could walk up to you tonight and give you a box that had $50 million cash in it and said, here, you can do whatever you want with this. Don't worry about it. that's not automatically going to suddenly make you an evil person. But it can. The chance is a lot higher that it can, because there's a lot of danger in money. And Scripture constantly warns against trusting in it. We see in Matthew 6:24, y'all very familiar with this, no one can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. In King James, there's mammon. You can't. Paul, he goes on to warn similar, 1 Timothy 6:10, for the love of money, remember this, for the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil. Not money. That's the root of, the love of money is a root of all sorts of evil. And some by longing for it have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Absolutely true. But this is what you would call influence without wisdom. And it's very dangerous, because what money does is it often amplifies the worst in people, or it amplifies the best in people. If you have somebody who is truly a kind soul or a giving soul or a gracious soul, and they suddenly get a lot of money, they're probably going to help people with that. They're probably going to set up organizations and trust and all these things to help people out. But if you get somebody who is very wicked, who likes to indulge in drink, who likes to indulge in smoke, who likes to indulge in pills or whatever, you give them a lot of money, they are going to spend it on themselves. They're going to spend it on those things. If you don't believe me, what's the show about the lottery winners where it basically disappears as soon as they get it? It's called something. You remember that? Remember the name of it? It's about all these lottery winners who won big jackpots, and they ended up losing it because they spent it all. One particular man that I remember, just because it's so wild, is that he would carry around a suitcase with him all the time that had upwards of $250,000 in cash in it. Do you know why he carried that suitcase around it? Because he frequently visited an adult entertainment complex, and he would give them the cash. And he would buy drugs. He would do cocaine right there in these adult facilities. And one day it led to him arresting, and he kept doing it, and he has nothing. This guy won like $75 million, and he spent every bit of it on junk. Wasted it, threw it away. Has nothing now. They have absolutely nothing because he quit his job like anybody would. If you won $75 million, you'd be like, peace out, see you later. But he wasted every bit of it. It amplified the corruptness of his heart. And that's what wealth does if you're not careful. The gospel kind of reframes wealth entirely here. Believers, we're not owners of things. Even if somebody came up and gave Paul Ray $75 million in cash, Paul Ray is truly not the owner of that. He's a steward of that. We know that everything belongs to God. Everything. We belong to God. And the things that we have, we're supposed to be good stewards of them, just like Adam and Eve were supposed to be good stewards of this planet that was kind of gifted to them. Everything belongs to God. Jesus taught us in Matthew 6:33, but seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be provided to you. That should be, whether you have millions of dollars in the bank or not, we should all be in the same spiritual boat to where we are ever reaching and running toward Christ in everything that we do. That should always be our goal and our aim. So, moral of that, use money wisely. Don't let it corrupt you. Don't let it become your little g God. Don't let it control your life. Let's look at the last one, verse 20. Pretty quick one here. Furthermore, in your bedroom, do not curse a king, and in your sleeping rooms, do not curse a rich person. For a bird of the sky will bring the sound, and the winged one will make your word known. There's a lot of poetic analogies kind of going on here. There's not going to be a literal bird that's going to fly up to your window and then carry what you say onto somebody else. I suppose Paul and Becky, he's got birds. They talk. I'm sure it's theoretically possible that one of those birds could escape and land on Paul Ray's porch, and Paul Ray could say something and that bird could take it back. It's a possibility. Very slim, but it's a possibility. But that's not what that means. It doesn't mean a crow is going to fly next to your house and hear what you say and then carry that sound on its wings. It's just one of those things that if you had to make that simple, the stuff that you say in secret will eventually come out, whether in your actions or your behavior, or just it could be heard by somebody. But he gives all these things. In your bedroom, don't curse a king. Don't sit in your bedroom and just curse Trump. Or if it was Biden, don't sit in your bedroom and curse Biden. School board members, state people, we are not supposed to sit around and curse them in the bedroom because it comes out. And the winged one will make your word known. It comes out one way or the other. The things that we whisper in secret, they often do become known publicly. Speech reveals the heart. For example, Matthew 12:34, your offspring of vipers. I read this one last week as well. How can you, being evil, express any good things? For the mouth speaks from that which fills the heart. We got to be very careful with those things, because even when we're saying something in private in our bedrooms that nobody else is around, you're just having a screaming fit because of the government, the stupidity of it all, and you're just ranting and raving in there. It should be one of those moments to where you have to stop and say, you know what, this is reflecting my heart. This is reflecting that I might not have good things in my heart right now, and they're coming out of my mouth. And that's the hard truth. We read about this in Romans, twice at least, about how we are supposed to behave around government. Even if they are a bunch of idiots, even if they are completely incompetent, we have a certain way that we are called to behave around them. 1 Peter 2:17, for example, honor all people, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. And then we see all the whole chapter's worth of it in Romans. But that's a principle that is a spiritual discipline that's very hard to practice, because you're passionate about politics, maybe. I'm not so much anymore. I've kind of gotten to that age where, I'll be honest with you, I've seen the idiocy on both sides of the aisle. It's kind of where I'm at. And I don't know what you'd call me. I know I'm conservative, but I still see just the goofiness of it all. It's just predictable behavior on both sides. It's like they have a script and they follow it, and it just kills me. But how am I supposed to act around that? If you rewind, and Biden was still president, or Obama was still president, and for whatever reason he's driving down Chilhai View, and his limo broke down in front of my house, and he walked in and he said, "Hey, can I come in and wait for the presidential tow truck to pick me up?" How would I treat them? I mean, I'll be honest with me. I would just sit down and have a conversation with them. I wouldn't bring anything political into it. I'd just eat. But would you bash them? No. Come to my house. I don't want your trash in here. I don't want the likes of you in this house. Would you honor them? Would you love them? Would you, when they left and they got back in their car, would you pray for them? When you hear of a new policy change that just absolutely wrecks your life, that takes money away from your family, that just makes your life harder, are you going to pray for those leaders? It's hard. James, over in James 3:5, back to the thought of the tongue, he says this in James 3:5, so also the tongue is a small part of the body, and yet it boasts great things. See how great a forest is set aflame by such a small fire. Words can absolutely build cultures. You can build each other up. You have options. I'm giving you options tonight. You can go into work tomorrow and you can build your coworkers up. You can build your colleagues up. Or you can burn them down to the ground real quick. Teachers, you can do the same with your students. You can build them up or you can tear them down. Parents, you can do the same with your children. You can build them up, you can tear them down. Parents, you can do the thing with your spouse. You can build them up or you can tear them down. Words are incredibly impactful. But, good news, the gospel transforms speech. It allows us to be gracious. It allows us and enables us to do things that just we as normal sinful human beings normally can't do. Ephesians 4:29, let no unwholesome word come out of your mouth, but if there is any good word for edification according to the need of the moment, say that so that it will give grace to those who hear. We can do that because of the power of the Spirit. That's it. I couldn't imagine the path that I would have been on if I wasn't raised in church, if I wasn't introduced to the faith. I couldn't imagine. Mom has always said that I would, if I weren't a Christian, I would do some very shady things. It would mostly be around technology. I'd be one of those that probably got accused of hacking into some government database somewhere. But I couldn't imagine. I mean, I know my head. You all don't really see it, but I know what goes on in here. I know the wickedness, the potential that is there. I couldn't imagine what I would be without Christ. And we all have the Spirit of God who enables us, who directs us, who guides us. So yes, don't condemn yourself or down yourself and say, you know what, I can't say good things. I can't say nice things. You can. If you have the Spirit of God in you, you absolutely can. And you should, for the sole purpose of building up, always building up. All right, that's the last of 10. Chapter 10, we'll be going into 11 next week. 11 is, I like 11 for a lot of different reasons. I think chapter 11 is probably the most practical, spiritual, pastoral out of all the other chapters that we read up until this point, out of the whole book of Ecclesiastes. So I think you'll like chapter 11. All right, any questions, comments? Disagreements? Objections, Bobby? All right. Well, thank you all for watching online.